someone. My lord, your time has come right between the eyes. Felled his master not by chance, away with pomp and circumstance. Come join our merry dance to the rhythm of goodbye. Farewell the jewel crown, farewell the velvet gown. Watch it all come tumbling down. Goodbye to the crown. Goodbye to the crown. Goodbye to the king of nothing really. Wave of a hand and a life of Riley. Pot Nazi, pot King Billy. Goodbye to the crown. Goodbye to the dear old mum, mummified on gin and rum. Smile and wave and just play dumb. Goodbye to the crown. Farewell the jewel crown, farewell the velvet gown. Watch it all come tumbling down. Goodbye to the crown. Goodbye to the crown.
Very warm greetings to you and welcome to the Monarchy with me, Samson Sees, here on Press TV. If you are watching this program, you are so blatantly ready for some more controversial stories about Britain. That's right, we give you the alternative material that you just won't hear about on mainstream media networks. So if I were you, I'd prepare for the latest contentious topics lined up for this episode. Here's a taste of things to come. King Juan Carlos of Spain has announced his intention to abdicate after nearly 40 years on the throne. His son, Crown Prince Felipe, at the age of 45, will take over the throne. If you think another European monarch abdication brings the old story of the British Queen clinching to the crown back to the spotlight, you may have to reconsider. They are already back to the stage after Prince Charles's latest political gaffe.
Britain's heir to the throne, Prince Charles, added his voice to Western propaganda effort demonizing Russian President Vladimir Putin. That's a royal use of historical distortion, considering the past pro-Nazi sympathies of Britain's House of Windsor and the personal friendship between Hitler and former King Edward VIII, Charles's granduncle. According to media reports, the British monarch compared Putin to Adolf Hitler. He made the public remark while on a visit to Canada, where he was attending a World War II memorial ceremony in the naval city of Halifax. A staff member at the Canadian War Museum told Charles that her European Jewish family had fled from Nazi aggression. The British royal then opined, and now Putin is doing just about the same as Hitler. Prince Charles, who is first in line to succeed as Britain's head of state, has thus lent official British weight to the relentless vilification of Vladimir Putin and Russia over the Ukraine crisis. This crass distortion of history by Western officials, political leaders, and media is not only devoid of facts and historical understanding, it is much more sinister than that. Demonizing Putin over the Ukraine crisis is out-and-out propaganda to mislead the Western public by concealing the real cause and perpetrators of the turmoil in Russia's strategically important neighboring country. This inflammatory deception is recklessly setting the stage for an all-out war.
Бегом, бегом, бегом! Дави!
The regime change operation in Kiev that took place on the 23rd of February with the ousting of elected President Viktor Yanukovych was a carefully coordinated assault on the state by the Western-backed fascist forces. The illegal occupation of government buildings in Kiev and other West Ukrainian cities was integrated with a massive campaign of vandalism, violence, and intimidation against opposing media, politicians, civic leaders, and members of the public. Scarcely reported in the Western media were several murders of politicians and members of the state security forces. This campaign of terror by self-proclaimed neo-Nazis who openly glorify the earlier collaboration of Ukrainian fascists with Hitler's conquest and mass extermination during the Second World War, but which Western politicians and media lionize as a pro-democracy movement, is how the present regime in Kiev came to seize power.
Напиши давай! Ти будеш за мої гроші! У моїй країні керувати! Руки прибери! Сідай сюди! Сиди тут! Сиди! Зараз тобі от бумажка! Сиди, будь ласка! Бумажка! Пиши, от ручка! Я сказав! Швидко пиши! Давай! На, пиши! Бігом пиши! Ти будеш брехати на Україні! Пиши, бо я тобі зараз дам! Бігом пиши! Ти москальський непотріб! Бігом пиши!
People who have taken over the government are a bunch of thugs, and I don't use the word in a light way. We have neo-Nazis who are responsible for national security, defense. They oversee a very powerful national security and defense committee. They've put these neo-Nazi people in positions of authority, and we must also understand that this is the first neo-Nazi government, full-fledged neo-Nazi government installed in the post-World War II period.
The victims are always blamed as the criminals. The perpetrators of the crimes are always portrayed as the victims, and the victims are always portrayed as the perpetrators. So in eastern Ukraine, you have a coup-installed government, or what was a coup-installed government. Now Poroshenko is in charge, who's continuing the operations. I know that in eastern Ukraine they just shot at a hospital. I've seen the pictures of the people in the hospital having been evacuated to the basement. But that aside, putting that aside, you have a fascist government that was installed through a coup that's been passed for a democratic revolution, killing its own people, and yet the people that are fighting back, that are resisting, that are reacting, this is a reaction, of course, to the coup, they're the ones who are being blamed as the criminals, when it's not like that. The people who came into power, many of them very clearly said that we want to kill Muscovites on knives. Now, Muscovite is a derogatory term for Russians. It means kill the ethnic Russians, because that's in Ukraine. These fascists refer to the ethnic Russians as Muscovites and as foreigners and aliens. And these are the forces that are being supported by countries like Britain, by France, by the United States, and unfortunately by the government here in Ottawa.
That reign of terror gives accurate meaning to why the people of Ukraine voted to secede and join with the Russian Federation on the 16th of March. It also explains why Russian-speaking people in the eastern regions of Donetsk and Lugansk have set up self-defense zones and also voted for independence from Kiev on the 11th of May. The Western criminal enterprise in Ukraine is so audacious it has to be covered up by Washington and its European allies, with the compliant propagandizing assistance of the corporate news media, because the implications are so disturbing. The West has to turn reality on its head in order to distract public opinion by making outlandish and baseless comparisons between Putin and the Third Reich. Britain's Prince Charles is the latest propaganda mouthpiece in this gross distortion of the truth. But the intervention by the House of Windsor has a particular irony. Charles's granduncle, the former King Edward VIII, was an arch-Nazi sympathiser who stands accused of passing British secrets to the Nazis during the war. The disgraced royal had to be sent into exile in the Caribbean Bahamas by Prime Minister Winston Churchill because he was undermining the British war effort. And after the war, British intelligence went on a special mission in defeated Nazi Germany to retrieve incriminating correspondence between Edward and the Führer. Edward's collusion with Nazi Germany was typical of Western capitalist rulers' pro-Nazi views. During the 1930s, the ruling class of Britain and the US were colluding with Hitler and European fascism as a bulwark against the Soviet Union and socialist revolution in their own countries. Of course, the fascist formula turned out horribly wrong.
Well, I find that it's ironic that Prince Charles would compare Vladimir Putin to Adolf Hitler, because if anybody knows anything about Hitler, it would happen to be many members of the House of Windsor. Let me start by saying that both Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth II are originally German. Prince Philip himself, his 3 sisters married Nazis. Actually, Prince Charles's 3 aunts, which are Prince Philip's sisters, they were members of the Nazi Party. Prince Philip's brother-in-laws, another Prince Philip and Prince Christoph, they were members of the Nazi apparatus. One of them was one of Heinrich Himmler's lieutenants. He was a colonel in the SS. The other one was a Nazi governor. Prince Charles is one of the Queen's closest relatives, who would be the cousin of the Queen's father, George V. That was Charles Edward. He changed his name to Karl Edward when he went to Coburg. He was sent to Coburg by Queen Victoria. Was one of Hitler's closest friends and part of Hitler's inner circle.
Just as then, Western imperialism is once again finding common cause with fascism, this time in Ukraine. And the target of their machinations is once again the geopolitical power of Russia. That is why the propaganda stakes are so high. In their fitful efforts to deceive, the Western political, financial and media establishments are twisting history into a grotesquely false analogy. That a member of the Nazi-admiring House of Windsor, formerly the Germanic House of Saxe-Coburg, should also engage in this aggressive Western demonizing of Putin and Russia is particularly odious. These people are shameless in their ignorance, arrogance, or downright stupidity.
Hitler, who hasn't been called Hitler? They've called Milosevic Hitler. They've called Bashar al-Assad Hitler. They've called Gaddafi Hitler. They've called anybody that they don't like Hitler. They're calling Putin Hitler. We shouldn't be surprised. I'm not surprised at all. It's become a very regular thing for officials or statesmen in the so-called West to refer to somebody they don't like as Hitler. So this is not a surprise at all, and I think it reflects the tensions between countries like Britain and the United States. The tensions they have with the Russian Federation and its allies. So this obviously is a reflection of that, because Vladimir Putin doesn't, there's nothing that justifies calling him Hitler.
The row over the Prince of Wales's alleged gaffe deepened when the Russian president responded with his own withering assessment of the heir to the throne. Asked about the prince's alleged remarks, Putin said they were unacceptable and wrong, and not what monarchs do. At a press conference in St. Petersburg, Putin said of the incident, "It reminds me of a good proverb. You are angry. That means you are wrong." The Ministry of Defense has revealed that a US spy drone has flown through UK airspace for the first time. The unarmed Global Hawk reconnaissance aircraft flew through UK sovereign airspace on 3 occasions in the last month as part of a NATO exercise. This comes as in a move to keep Britain in the Global Drones Club. The MOD is planning to deploy the operational drones in Afghanistan to the Persian Gulf, or deploy them alongside US drones undertaking surveillance and so-called counter-terrorism in Africa.
As the December 2014 Afghan drawdown deadline approaches, the UK government has accepted that it can't bring its fleet of 10 armed Reapers back to the UK, except packed up in boxes. Due to safety concerns, Reaper drones will not be allowed to fly in the UK, even in segregated airspace. The MOD, however, wants to keep the drones flying, so the question that is exercising senior British politicians and officials is, where in the world shall we put our armed drones now? Although it was thought that some UK drones might remain in Afghanistan as part of a post-conflict security arrangement, this option has become much less attractive, as there is a desire by the UK to draw a line under the Afghan war and move on. This conclusion has only been hardened with the increasing possibility that the US forces may not stay in Afghanistan at all after 2014, unless a bilateral security agreement is signed by August. If the UK wants to keep its armed drones operational, it appears to have 2 broad options. Deploy them alongside other British aircraft in the Persian Gulf, or deploy them alongside US drones undertaking surveillance and so-called counter-terrorism in Africa. UK military forces in the Persian Gulf receive little publicity, as the host countries do not want the presence of foreign troops highlighted, while the UK is a little sensitive about being seen to support such autocratic regimes. Nevertheless, a squadron of the Royal Air Force Typhoons is based at Al Minhad Air Base near Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates. Over the past few years, the UK has been trying to bolster its relationship with Persian Gulf states, and especially with the United Arab Emirates. Though this has been in part about trying to gain lucrative arms sales, which embarrassingly did not come to fruition, it has also been about the UK becoming more focused on the Persian Gulf as a key strategic military location. Although the UK also has a military presence in other Persian Gulf states including Bahrain, Qatar and Saudi Arabia, Al Minhad in the UAE is the most likely option. Firstly, there is already an RAF squadron present, which means the communications and control infrastructure is already in place. And secondly, the UAE was the first non-NATO country to have been allowed to buy the unarmed export version of Reaper, and may well see an advantage to having UK Reapers based alongside them. When he was asked about the possibility of establishing a permanent presence in the Persian Gulf during an April 2014 visit to Qatar, Defence Secretary Philip Hammond stated, "It's a possibility that we are looking at, and we're interested to discuss how to take that forward. We haven't decided for sure to do this yet, but certainly it's one of the options we are looking at. If UK drones are deployed to the Persian Gulf, it may well be that they take on these patrols and potential clashes with the Iranian Air Force." Another option for the UK appears to be basing its drones alongside US and French drones in Africa. The known location of deployed US drones is mapped, although it is highly likely that there are other bases that are not in the public domain. Rumours include Ouagadougou in Burkina Faso and Al-Wiq in Libya. About 50 UK personnel are permanently stationed there to facilitate training exercises by British troops in Kenya, and while the British Army has a small training unit, it has no permanent airbase there. It is likely, therefore, that if UK Reapers are to be deployed to Africa, it would be alongside US drones based at Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti Arba Minch in Ethiopia, or Niamey in Niger. A third possibility is that the UK's drones could be deployed to the Sigonella airbase in Italy, alongside Italian and US drones, or to various bases in North America, where they could simply be involved in training exercises. This, however, is apparently an unlikely option. Whatever happens, it should be remembered that behind the decision to redeploy drones from Afghanistan to either the Persian Gulf or to Africa is not some magnanimous desire to create security for the people living in that part of the globe. Rather, it is simply the wish to keep the drones operational in order to be part of the drones club. However, once the drones are redeployed, it increases the likelihood that the UK will become embroiled in further armed conflict. The best option, the one that would really increase global security, is simply for the drones to be disassembled and packed back into their boxes for storage at RAF Waddington in England. This option, however, appears to be off the table.
We don't feel that our government should be killing people thousands of miles away without trial, without conviction.
It is a very, very wicked thing to do. We must not condone it, and a lot of our people do not know that we're doing this, in fact.
They encourage governments to use weapons to kill people in other lands without taking any responsibility because they feel it doesn't put their troops at risk.
At the moment, there is absolutely no openness about how drones are being used, yet we know that children and civilians are being killed in Afghanistan, in Pakistan and in Yemen. This is just not acceptable, it's immoral and it's illegal.
You may agree with what you heard today, or you may totally differ. Anyhow, we want to hear from you, so get online with us and comment on our Facebook wall. Our page is called UK Desk Press TV. You can also email us at britain@presstv.ir. Stay in touch whatever you do, because you've been viewing The Monarchy, and The Monarchy has without a doubt been viewing Britain. Stay well, and goodbye from me and the team.